Hi, welcome to Cyber Threat Hunting 101. This is an overview of threat hunting techniques. In this overview, we'll review statistical analysis, stat counting, risk scoring, and behavior analysis. What is statistical analysis? It's a technique that is used to analyze data and detect anomalies that may indicate the presence of a cyber threat. This technique involves analyzing various metrics and identifying patterns that deviate from the norm. For example, an increase in network traffic or a sudden surge in failed logon attempts could indicate the presence of a threat. Statistical analysis can be automated, and it can help threat hunters quickly identify potential threats. Next, we'll do a demo of a statistical analysis threat hunting technique. In this query, we're looking for image. We're doing a distinct count on the image as image count, the parent image, and then a distinct count on parent image count by integrity level. And this will help us quickly identify things that are outliers and that are not normal to our environment. So in order for you to be able to run this hunt, you would have to identify what's normal first. And once you have that identified, you can run this hunt to identify the outliers. So here we have integrity level high with all the image names and parent images, and then the count, and then total event count. We have medium events with image count and parent count and total event counts. Same thing for system. Now, I ran this test using Atomic Red Team, so I already know what's malicious, and everything in here is malicious under the high context, running under it with the high integrity level. But in your environment, you're going to have events that are intermingled with normal traffic as well as potentially malicious traffic, so it's good to have a baseline for that. Next, stat counting. So what is stat counting? Stat counting is another technique used in cyber threat hunting. This technique involves counting the numbers of occurrences of certain events, such as failed login attempts or unauthorized access attempts. By tracking the frequency of these events, threat hunters can identify patterns and detect potential threats. Next, we'll do a demo of a query for stat counting. And here we're actually, let me correct this. So here we're counting by ascending order. Image count, count, ascending. So we're looking for things that happen less frequency. If we wanted to look for things that happen more often, we would change the order count to descending, and that would give us the higher count. In this technique, we can identify outliers depending on what we're looking for. So if it's something that should happen less frequent, we would want to use descending. Ascending. If it's something that also happens that's very noisy, such as a beacon, you may want to look for descending to identify those outliers based on your network traffic. So next, what is risk scoring? Risk scoring is a technique used to evaluate the potential risk by a cyber threat. This technique involves assigning a score to each threat based on various factors, such as the type of threat, the likelihood of it occurring, and the potential impact it could have on the organization. By prioritizing threats based on their risk score, threat hunters can focus their efforts on the most significant threats and reduce the risk of a successful attack. Next, we'll do a risk scoring demo. So here we're actually looking for CertUtil with command line parameters, decode, encode, URL cache, and HTTP. we're assigning a score of 7, and then we are multiplying that score by the number of events seen in the count. And this will actually bubble up the most egregious events within your environment using this risk scoring technique. So here we have a host. We see that it's running in high interior level. It has a score of 35 with an individual score of 7, as we defined here in our query. We see the image file name and the commands that are attributed to that, along with the parent image and parent command line. Same host. We have a different event. We have a risk score of 28. Original file name is command prompt cmd.exe. We see the commands that are associated that match what we're looking for in our query. And again, the parent image file name and the parent command line process. So in this one, we can see certutil is running URL cache parameter to download something from GitHub. Of course, this is related to the atomic red team testing I did earlier. What is behavior analysis? Behavior analysis is a technique used to identify abnormal behavior that may indicate the presence of a cyber threat. This technique involves monitoring network traffic, user activity, or other system events to identify patterns that deviate from the norm. For example, an employee accessing sensitive information outside of regular business hours, or a sudden increase in file transfers could indicate the presence of a threat. Behavior analysis can help threat hunters quickly identify potential threats and take the appropriate action. Next, we'll conduct a behavior analysis query threat hunt. So here we're looking for TTPs that could be attributed to a threat actor. I made these up, but using cyber threat intelligence, you can identify the TTPs for known threat actors and basically create the same query. But in this example, we're looking for activity related to a trib, AnyDesk, BitsAdmin, and AdFine. And we're hoping to match all 4. So in the query, in the test, obviously, we're matching all 4. Sometimes you may only match 3 out of the 4, but that would be a good indication that something is running amok. Here we can see AdFine, Attrib, BitsAdmin, and CMD. We can also see the parent command line that's associated with this activity, and the command line that's associated with this activity. I'm not going to go into what each of these living off the land binaries actually mean, but it'd be good for you to research that. This concludes this module. Thank you for joining. If you have any questions, we'll see you on Discord.
Welcome to Threat Hunt 101. Threat hunting is an interesting and exciting field that allows us to delve deeper into different topics and helps organizations in their overall secure all things strategy. Hi, this is Sai, and today we will go over CTH case studies and labs. In this course, we will go over a threat hunting case study and discuss few things we can learn from it. Then we will cover how to create a lab around the case study. And finally, we will end with a few steps on how to get started with the labs. We will review a case study on MoveIt vulnerability. MoveIt Transfer is a widely used managed file transfer MFT solution that many organizations rely on. On May 31st, a SQL injection vulnerability was discovered that allowed remote code execution on MoveIt instances. According to the threat intel, Clop ransomware claimed the responsibility, and it was discovered that they had been aware of this vulnerability for almost 2 years. It is also worth noting that they have claimed 377 victims in 2023 alone since the beginning of the vulnerability that came out, since the exploitation began. Although the company responsible for the product has since released a patch for the vulnerability, given the length of the time it was exploited, we wanted to perform a threat hunt in our environment to ensure that our systems are not impacted. To facilitate our threat hunting efforts, we will follow a 6-step process outlined on the right-hand side of the slide. For more detailed information and explanation for the process, please refer to last year's Blue Team Village presentation. I think the title will be Hunting Adversaries Schedule on YouTube, or you can watch the other CTH 101 before this one in order to get an idea. In this section, we will provide a brief overview of where to start, what hypotheses we have, what data we need to gather, techniques we can use, and what we can learn from it. The starting point of any investigation is hypothesis, as you can see in the slide. In this case, our hypothesis is that adversaries may be exploiting a specific product in a specific way, which allows them to create, change, exfiltrate, or encrypt on the MoveIt instance via the SQL injection vulnerability in our environment. To continue with our investigation, we need to collect the data required for our hunt. We gathered a list of necessary data by searching through various blog posts and Twitter. The gathered information is like IIS logs to check for the web shells. We gathered the MoveIt event and application logs. And also we gathered proxy logs, network communication logs, DNS logs, endpoint logs, specifically related to file events. All these logs we know to collect it because of the research that we performed on the vulnerability and the exploitation. After gathering our data, it was time to search for it. Our internal documents revealed that not all documents were present in our SIM. While we had proxy and network DNS logs in the SIM, other logs were only present on the endpoint itself. Additionally, logs from the MoveIt application were available for download. To investigate these logs, we had two options: search logs individually on the SIM and download logs from the endpoint and MoveIt application, or download the logs from the endpoint and MoveIt application and ingest them into our SIM for cross-log correlation. We opted for the latter. Once all the logs were in our SIM, we began investigating with atomic indicators. Given the recent exploitation, the attackers likely did not change their infrastructure yet. So we checked for atomic indicators such as human to ASPX, guest access ASPX, and MoveIt DLL itself, a creation of a 15-character usernames, and for a specific field in a HTTP response or request, among other things. After collecting data, we found events related to our searches and gathered more IOCs, such as IP addresses. We cross-checked them with our network proxy logs and DNS logs and checked for things like excess of 200, 500, 400 responses, HTTP codes to identify file requests, downloads, while creating them with the IPs we found. We downloaded the web shell itself to perform additional investigation. We then started to check for additional scoping things like for lateral movement, because they already got hold of their initial access to the environment through this vulnerability. While we were working on this, our favorite researchers at Huntress and our relentless John Hammond in his Twitter shared that creation of the ASPX is simply a choice of the attackers, and they do not necessarily need to do that. They can gain shell directly. Therefore, we shifted our focus, followed their blog to explore how this was possible. We recreated it. We used, the POC generated by others like Horizon and created our own exploit by emulating the attacker to see what possible data sources or data was generated and how to collect and analyze it. For example, we searched for actions performed by MoveIt SVC account and determined if they were done, if the actions performed by that account were legitimately or what actions they performed and other exploitation purposes. While this is not an in-depth review of the vulnerability, we have successfully scoped our hunt, expanded it to include additional findings from industry intel, and performed intrusion analysis once again. This process has taught us important skills such as hypothesis creation via vulnerability research, data gathering and analysis, interpreting results, and feeding back into our hypothesis to include additional findings. Next, let's explore how to set up a lab to perform these steps. But before that, as we can see, there are other case studies that are linked here. Please do go ahead and check. There are some interesting ones like the Ghost Cat one by Carbon Black, or there was this how to perform threat hunting using WAF data by Fastly. So please feel free to check those. After that, now let's explore how to set up our lab to perform these steps. This will be a brief overview on how to set up the lab in theory, and you can create the lab to gather the necessary data. Why should we do this? Why should we create a lab? Why it is necessary? Why it is important? Creating a lab helps us test our hypothesis, improve our technical understanding, obtain certifications if that's what we need for, and learn from failures by reading through the error messages after error messages, and why that is error messages caused, searching through Google, searching the technical documentation, etc., which helps in building ourselves, and is a very valuable exercise. Continuing with the example of MoveIt, a proprietary software from Progress, we can request a trial period and perform all the experimentation we want to perform, recreate the slab or recreate the attack, how it performed and everything. However, as we have seen, this process can be expanded beyond just this proprietary software. We learned from MoveIt's technical documentation that the software utilizes IIS as its foundation and adds MoveIt SVC to the administrator group. To create hypotheses based on this documentation for other software with a similar structure, we can do the following. Create an IIS instance on the Windows server and install Sysmon, Snort, and Zeek. Create a user and add them to the administrator group. Create a Kali box and connect to it, assuming that the zero-day vulnerability allowed for unauthenticated access. Download files from the IIS instance. Create a backdoor web shell on the instance using Kali. Afterward, we can offload all these logs to a SIM with the help of custom-made things from Elk, or there are pre-made things like Helk. You can request Splunk as your as a license, trial version or license free version, community version, which allows 500 MB of data, I guess. So you can choose it and check for any suspicious activity and behavior. As you are creating this, you know what you have created, so it's easier to check what is creating. But the best part is check what else is creating based on the behavior that you based on the activity that you have created in it. So the behavior is not only the behavior that is directly impacted, but there are other things that are indirectly impacted also. As you can see, this is quite a bit of work involved, but we can learn a great deal by implementing this lab, which can be applied to additional web shell-based or IIS-based investigations. These are some of the additional resources that you can use to create your own lab for specific use case and experimentation. Check out this example from Twitter where a user called Jay Hensinski posted typical steps for exploitation. We have included the attack flow and necessary components needed to build the lab. Like in this case, taking two Windows servers for the infrastructure, for RDP use case, and also where to find some recon commands and what information that you can find on it, downloading the advanced service scanner and how to perform it, how to dump memory using comsvc.dll. So you can go through this one and recreate this and see what sort of logs you can generate and how it is, how they are generated, where they are generated. So it will be a valuable exercise too, as this can get you at the starting point, but you can have your own. So go ahead. Thank you so much for attending the talk, and we hope you found it informative. Thank you. Welcome to Threat Hunt 101. This is the last part of the Threat Hunt 101 content, and thank you so much for sticking with us. To recap, we have defined threat hunting process as threat hunting is an proactive approach to cybersecurity that involves actively searching for threats within an organization's network or systems, hunting for activity and behaviors that are not currently detected or alerted by security tools. Then we learned different methodologies in threat hunting along with their advantages and limitations. To recap, signature-based is easy in implementation and automation. Behavior-based is helpful in uncovering new and unknown threats and it is great way to demonstrate the value of threat hunting and threat hunting program for the organization and other teams like IR, detection engineering, and etc. And finally, threat intelligence-based hunting that is based on the latest intel and emerging threats that needs a strong, mature team with resources. For this module, we have seen how collaboration with an existing threat intelligence team or need to have or develop skills in threat intelligence to assist our threat hunting. Also asking questions like what group or groups are known to attack our industry and what are their motivations, how to actively hunt and pivot for attacker infrastructure and tools, what are our requirements, how can we involve leadership to buy into this, etc. From there, we'll delve into the world of data engineering and familiarization. Here, we learned how to gather data and from where, and the purpose behind our collection. This can coincide with collaboration with detection engineering and security engineering teams for determining our ingestion strategy, ingestion pipeline, and querying capabilities with a proper common information model. As an example, we delve deeper into the world of Windows to see how Windows event logs and Sysmon is helpful in our overall threat hunting program. Once we have the data and got familiar with it, the next step that will sometimes difficult or dusting off our logical thinking is techniques used for querying and gathering data for further analysis. We learned how to use statistical and behavior analysis along with stack counting, risk scoring, and where to use them. Like stack counting is used for failed login attempts, unauthorized access attempts, tracking the frequency of events, identifying patterns to detect potential threats, etc. Finally, we brought everything together with a case study and labs. Now, the main question you might be thinking of is, I'm all pumped with all the data that you have provided us and all the slides I've been through, but what should I do with it? Or where can I go from here? As we mentioned before, threat hunting skills can be used in wide variety of areas. Like if you're working in any of the fields mentioned here, you can start applying those skills in threat hunting. If you want to learn about what a particular tool does, if it's open source, you can read its code and see what it's doing, what data it generates or it needs, and where it will check to get that data. Use AI tools like ChatGPT to assist you with the reading and understanding code. You thought we will not mention ChatGPT, you know? No way, we will. But yeah, it has its usefulness, and you have to know what you're doing in order to make it useful. But for some things, you can use it also to just give it a code and see what it tells you, and see if it matches with your readings. So you get the idea, right? Like the blog posts, Twitter, and the interest in the topic, to take on new rabbit holes, to research on particular thing, a single thing for days, but always have a set of questions you would like to answer in your hunt. This will help you in guiding your hunt and creating that flow in your hunt, which will help you in future. Oh, sorry, my bad. Like in the in terms of the hunt that we are talking about, like creating your own or having a set of questions in spearfishing, let's say you can see specifically if you are interested in having spear phishing for OneNote. You can ask questions like, what is OneNote? How it is used? Why adversaries are using OneNote? How it is weaponized? Which on itself has several sub-questions like, what is the underlying technology? How an attacker can embed files in it? How attackers send these, right? You can say, what is the typical execution flow when a malicious OneNote is clicked? If so, you can see, are they different from normal connections? Like if a OneNote is open normally, how it looks, and if a OneNote is opened for a malicious purpose, how it looks. All this will help you in guiding those. So you need to have those questions in order. Sometimes the questions change sometimes as you go, but the main set of questions should always be there. This will allow you to stay, in course of the hunt you're doing, and not going in deeper at the first go, and you can have the iterative process of understanding things as you go through these things. You can go at a higher level and then go deeper as you go. In terms of certifications, there are many, but here are some of the ones that are highly regarded in the recent past. There is SANS Forensic Analyst certification. There are new SANS courses like Cloud Threat Hunting, Cloud Forensics, Linux Incident Response, and Incident Response. There are other things like Certified Threat Hunting Professional from IME. There is MTH, Certified Threat Hunter. There is Chris Sanders' Practical Threat Hunting Training. And there is from Attack itself, like Threat Hunting, Detection Engineering, and Certification to Career Path. You can choose whichever one you want, and how you want to progress in this particular field. Next, we will have another case study on how to apply all the things that you have learned with a real-world attack. And yeah, see you there. And thank you once again for sticking with us. Have a good day.